Hello everybody, I hope you guys had a great Wednesday. Today we're going to be looking at your 5-day forecast. We're going to be going over your precipitation, temperatures, temperature anomalies, and much more. And we're going to be breaking down what's going on weather-wise, and we're also going to be kind of looking at the upper atmosphere a little bit in the beginning of the video, just showing you what's happening, because we do have a fairly strong low-pressure system that's over the parts of the southwest, the southern Rockies, and then that's going to be making its trek eastward. Now, before we do get into it though, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you never miss a video when I upload. Now, here's the current National Weather Service, and it's pretty quiet over the east, not a lot happening, but then over the west, a lot of action as far as warnings and advisories. So in these darker pinks, you could say red flag warnings, some dry weather, and some pretty gusty onshore winds for California, especially Northern California. Then winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings in those pinks and purples, and that would be for parts of the Sierra Mountains, then getting into parts of Nevada, and then into some of the northern central Rockies, where you could have some snowfall. And then also we have another batch of winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, and that's from a Clipper system that's going to be coming down, and then these two low pressures are going to move kind of right into each other, and then they're going to kind of merge and move out into the east. And then we have some flash flood watches over parts of much of Arizona, actually. Flash flood warnings in effect. That's very local, but make sure you're staying connected. You'll get a notification on your phone most likely, so just kind of stay tuned to your phone, and if you do get one of those advisories, then try and seek higher ground, especially if you see those waters rising outside of your house or wherever you are at that moment. Now, I just want to show you the satellite currently, and it's kind of interesting what's happening. So we have two high pressure systems. We have one over the Great Lakes and then one situated right near the Gulf Coast. Then we have our low pressure system that's centered more right around here, and then we have another low pressure system that is right around up here. So you see we have this low pressure system, you see these winds and all these clouds moving out that way, and you see this very extensive cloud cover. Here's your offshore system bringing in some winds, some fairly gusty winds, and then also some cloud cover for the northeast. And here's your system that's going to be bringing snowfall to parts of the northern plains. I just thought it was quite interesting how the cloud cover looks today, and how the satellite imagery looks like. Don't usually show this on the channel, but it was very fascinating how it looked today. Also, you can see this banding coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. You see how these clouds are moving up north, and that's going to be forcing or pushing some moisture up into the system, kind of fueling it with some low-level clouds. Now, we're going to look at your precipitation from the European model. Now, here's the surface map, and this is what's happening pretty much right now or in the next couple of hours. And you see, this was your system, and you're seeing this is your Gulf moisture being pulled up, and it's going to kind of move in. You're going to have this low pressure that's going to build, and that's going to move out, but then you have this bigger low pressure, and that's also going to move out to the east. So you see a lot of rain, mountain snow associated with this, and then once you get into the Wyoming, Montana, and then also those higher elevations, and then into North Dakota, Minnesota, you're seeing some snowfall, wintry mix, some rainfall mixing in there for some of those lower elevations as well. Now, as we move this on, you see this continues to move. This would be for tonight, so this would be pretty much in another hour or so, and we have a lot of snowfall. It was pretty heavy to moderate snowfall, indicative of where those winter storm warnings are over the northeastern part of Minnesota, where you could be picking up about 6 inches of snow or a little bit more from this system. Here's that system that's that developed, and now it's gonna move out to the east, and that was the system pulling up that Gulf moisture. And then as we continue this, you see it's going to really intensify. If you remember, the last video I did post about 1 or 2 days ago, and that showed I was talking about right at the end of the video, talking about how we could have this system developing, and then a bunch of other people started catching on by today. So I was one of the earliest people to actually catch on to this, just scrolling through the models, and a couple of the models were agreeing on this big system. The system has toned down from then, and now it's more on the northwestern side. It's a bit further northwest, but that's just with recent model trends. Model trends last night were showing 2-3 feet of snow over this area. I was a bit skeptical of that, and like I was thinking, I didn't forecast it officially, but I was thinking it was most likely going to move a bit northwest. It was showing about 2 or 3 feet of snow into northwest Wyoming, southern Minnesota, and I really didn't think that cold air would be able to infiltrate that quickly to those areas. So yeah, so very early forecasting on that system, and now by just tomorrow or so, looks to actually develop a little bit. Now, as we continue, see it moves into northern Wisconsin, not dumping that much snowfall though, not too much snowfall, and this will stick as the ground is cold enough for it to stick at this point, but definitely nothing that's going to be crazy significant. More once you get to the northern Minnesota area will it be significant. And then the system moves out by Friday morning, and then this next system starts to develop, and you see this is when you're going to have some pretty thunderstorms over these areas, some pretty rainy conditions over the Tennessee Valley and then into parts of the southern plains. And then on the northern side, some lingering snow for the Rocky Mountains. Now, this is gonna move on by Friday night, and then into Saturday morning. It kind of stalls over these areas, so you're gonna have about 3 to 5 inches of rainfall again over these areas. It's definitely gonna help with the drought you guys had a couple of months ago, I believe, in October or September. I believe it was September, I think, and you guys didn't see hardly any rainfall for that entire month. So now you guys are bringing those deficits. And now some areas actually have more rainfall than average year to date. So it's definitely interesting how much the pattern has changed in just a couple of months. Now, this is going to continue to move on, a little bit of rain snow mixing in, and that snow could be moderate at times over the Ohio Valley. This is still about 3 days out, so a lot could change, especially with this snowfall. This snowfall might not actually occur, because we really need to see where this cold air is. If this does occur, really not going to stick. Look, this red line is your 32-degree line. So if I go into a little bit of a smaller pen size, you see this is your 32-degree line right here, and here is the northern extent of your snow. So that's about 100-mile distance between the rain snow line and then the 32-degree line. So most likely not going to stick if it does actually snow in the air. Now, by Sunday morning, it's getting into the parts of the Northeast, New York City, Boston, DC, getting impacted by this rainfall, and then it's gonna move. Kind of forms a low pressure. The low pressure system is gonna transfer. The original low was over Ohio and western Pennsylvania, and it's gonna transfer off the coast of New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. So that's it's gonna kind of transfer its energy and then kind of strengthen. But it is gonna be off the shore, so only a brief period of heavy snow or rain, depending on where you are, and then it's going to move up the coast of Maine, and pretty much a very heavy snowfall once you get into southeastern Canada by Monday morning, and then this would be for Monday night. Now, here's your total precipitation. In those greens, about 1/10 of an inch to half an inch. In those blues, half an inch to 1 inch. 1 to 2 inches in those yellows. 2 to 5 inches in those reds, and then 5 to about 7.5 inches in those browns and whites. Luckily, no areas look to be in the 5 to 7.5 inch area for rainfall over the next 5 days, but some areas definitely getting quite a lot of rainfall, about 2 to 3 inches, especially over the Tennessee Valley, parts of the southern plains as well. You guys could be seeing around 1 to 2 inches. Some areas seeing 3 inches, and then this is gonna stretch up where that low pressure kind of intensifies off the shore of the Mid-Atlantic. It's gonna bring some heavier rain for a brief period of time, and that's going to bring some heavier rainfall amounts for that system for the next 5 days. And then also for parts of the southwest, you could be seeing 1 to 3 inches in some parts of Arizona. Here's your snowfall over the next 5 days, and from that system, again, 6 inches or so, but nothing crazy like we were thinking just a couple of days ago. And then some mountain snow over from the system on the scale of about 1 to 2 feet of snowfall in some areas, so quite a lot of snowfall. And then in the interior northeast, also seeing some snowfall from this system. And again, we were talking about this pocket of snow. This is most likely not going to stick. This is just what the model picks up coming out of the air. It's not actually what is going to stick. That would be your snow depth, but this is just your snowfall in inches. So this most likely, if anything does stick, maybe a tenth of an inch to half an inch of snow, and definitely only on very cold surfaces or some grass, but definitely not on roadways. Probably not going to cause too much hassle in the form of travel. Now we're going to look at your temperature anomalies, and we're going to go by every 24 hours. So this would be for Wednesday or today. And here are your current temperature anomalies. So you see, we have this big area of warmth building in front of this system, your warm front, and then your system somewhere around here is going to be tracking up, and then it's going to be bringing that warm air with it to the east. For the northeast, the east, the mid-Atlantic, southeast, basically the eastern U.S., seeing about 1 to 10 degrees in those in parts of the northeast and New England. So staying a bit chilly. That was a general pattern over the last month or so. Now it's going to continue by about Friday. You're talking about very cold temperatures over parts of the central plains, and then that warm air infiltrating for just about 1 or 2 days over the east coast and the southeast. But then cold air overtakes by Saturday about in the afternoon, and then cold air sticks around, warm air coming in over parts of the northern plains, northwest, pretty much the western 2/3 of the U.S. A big flip around, because you have been seeing some pretty cold temperatures for all of these areas. Now it's really just the eastern third of the U.S. instead of the eastern 2/3, but the west staying predominantly warm for this time. Some areas seeing some cooler conditions once you get close to the U.S.-Mexico border. In New Mexico, Arizona, Southern California, those areas could be seeing about 1 to 5 degrees below average. But this is going to change as we move into the later half of the month, where it looks to kind of you start to release some of that blocking that we've had for much of the month over near the Gulf of Alaska, which led to these warmer temperatures over the west and these cooler temperatures over the east. It's going to turn where you're not going to have any more of this blocking anymore. So you're not going to have any of this blocking, and instead you're just going to have a lot of moisture coming in pretty much in a straight line. That Pacific jet stream is going to be activated, so a lot of moisture, especially for the west coast and the western areas. And then it's going to bring with it some warm fronts, some cold fronts with it. So a flip-floppy pattern, to say the least, going into December. Now here's your temperatures for Monday, and you see generally about 1 to 10 degrees above average for the central and eastern part of the U.S. Now, we're going to look at your temperatures, your actual air temperatures for your low temperatures and then your high temperatures. So here's your low temperatures. So once you're walking out of the door for Thursday, once you're going to work and school, you're seeing generally in those whites, blues, and then reds and dark reds, and then also into those purples. That's generally about 30 to negative 30 to about 0 degrees. So much of these areas seeing your low temperatures somewhere between 30 degrees and 0 degrees. And then once you get into this color around, you're seeing negative temperatures. So that's way up in Canada and those higher elevations, but some of this will creep down into the U.S. behind this system. Now here's your high temperatures. And with the high temperatures, you can really see where this system is. You see that's your warm front right there. Here is your cold front right behind it, and it's really well defined. You can really see that if I take this way, you can really see this warm air infiltrating and being pushed up north. Now, your daytime high is going to be generally in the 40s and 50s. Once you get into the southern plains, central U.S., and then also into the southeast, in the 50s and 60s. Some areas getting into the 70s and 80s near southern Texas. Now, here's your low temperatures for Friday. Friday morning, once you're getting out of the door, around 20 degrees, 10 degrees in some areas over the northern plains. And then once you get further south, generally in the 30s, 40s for some areas, and then some areas not getting below 60 degrees for some areas. Now, here's your high temperatures, and this warm air is going to creep up the east coast for Friday, and it's going to be in the 60s, some areas in the mid-Atlantic and northeast getting into the 60s. And then really over the southeast, going to be in the 70s and 80s. Over much of the country, though, it is going to be a high temperature of around 30 to 40 degrees, some areas being in the 50s. Now, here's your low temperatures for Saturday. 20s widespread, except for the southeast, really, and parts of the coastal parts of the west coast. Now, as we move into your Saturday, for your high temperatures, you're going to be generally in the 30s and 40s for mainly the northern eastern part of the U.S. So really, these areas going to be in the 30s for your high temperatures, 30s, low 40s, and then these areas as well could be in the 30s and 40s for your highs. Anywhere outside of that, generally in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s in some areas in southern Florida. Now, here's Sunday, and this is your cold front. You can see it. It's getting all the way down to central Florida, and it's really well defined. Here's your low pressure. That low pressure that transferred from Ohio, transferred its energy all the way off the coast of the mid-Atlantic, and that's going to bring colder temperatures all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico, and generally low temperatures over these areas below 32 degrees, and then if you're not in those areas, generally in about 40 to 50 degrees, some areas in the 60s. Now, high temperatures for Sunday, generally in the 60s, 70s, 50s, and then once you get into the northern parts of the U.S., in the 40s and 30s. Now, for Monday, in the 20s, 30s, some teens and single digits for your low temperatures on Monday morning, but once you get further to the south, in the 60s and 50s. Now, here's your Monday high temperatures, and you're seeing generally in the 40s and 50s, and then once you get into the southern plains and the southeast, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s as well, which is really warm for this time of year. Seeing temperatures in the 80s, definitely a little bit above average, especially over the southern Texas area, where you could be seeing highs in the 80s, mid 80s, some 90s over those areas. So very unusually hot over those areas. Now, if you did enjoy this video, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you never miss a video when I upload. Anyways, guys, that was Eli the Weather Guy, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.